Hello and welcome to the Controller Chronicles. In this video, I've got out my Super Nintendo and my Super Famicom, and I'm going to be talking about controllers. So here's the original Super Famicom controller and the North American SNES controller. I've already done a comparison video of these two. You can check the annotation right here. I'll post a link to that, and it will open up in a new window. But yeah, these were basically classic controllers, and really the kind of controllers that you think of when you think of perfect design. There's the rounded edges, the easy access to the buttons, and the shoulder buttons, and the D-pads being so excellent and all that. You might be wondering, well, why would you ever want a third-party controller when these controllers are excellent? Well, if you follow the series, you've already seen excellent other alternatives for the Super Nintendo and Super Famicom as well. But in this video, I'm going to talk about an alternative to both of these that is every bit as good as the original OEM controllers. And that is something I've shown actually previously in my RetroDuo Portable video, and that's this controller right here. This is the RetroBit Super Retro controller, as it says on the back. Super Retro controller. This design is actually a perfect melding of the original Sega Saturn controller and the feel and tactility of the Super Nintendo controller. What you get here is a D-pad that is nearly identical to the original D-pad in both size and shape and feeling. In fact, I'd even go as far to say the D-pad is even better on this controller than it is on the original Super Nintendo and Super Famicom controllers. And that's quite a statement, because this is probably among one of the best D-pads ever made. So using this D-pad, I don't know really how I can explain why it's so good. It just feels right. It doesn't get stuck in the middle like a lot of other third-party D-pads do. There's good resistance to it, but not so much resistance it feels mushy. You can independently move any of the directions that you want. It just feels really good in the hand. This is a perfect design D-pad. Also, the controller itself is very ergonomically designed and feels very good to hold. Next, the shoulder buttons. These shoulder buttons here are actually a little bit on an angle, and that allows your fingers to tap them very easily, as opposed to the original versions which had them on straight. So if you wanted to touch them, you'd have to really angle your fingers in this way, as opposed to these controllers, which are just very naturally angled, and it feels very good that way. Now, one thing I will have to criticize this controller for is the face buttons. Now, that's my original Super Famicom buttons here. Whoops. Cords. Alright. As you can see, the buttons are still color coordinated to be like the Super Famicom. But unlike the Super Famicom buttons, these buttons are actually a little bit rigid and are a little bit difficult to move. You have to apply far more force than you would on an actual Super Nintendo controller. You can't just do it like this. Here I'm pressing the button, but here I'm not actually pressing the button. Nothing's happening. I have to really press in. In addition to that, because of the choice to make the Y and X buttons concave like the Super Nintendo controller is with the Y and X buttons, they actually made the buttons so that they're stand up a bit more than the B and A buttons do. And because they did that, your fingers actually can get stuck on the sides of the buttons. The buttons don't get stuck like they would on the NES Advantage, but the NES but these buttons are a little bit stiff and a little bit uncomfortable to hold on the very edges of them. So that after a while, your fingers get more fatigued than they should. All that said, though, it's really a minor complaint, and this is really a great design. The start and select buttons in the middle function just as the start and select buttons on the original controller, so they're very nice to press and everything like that. One thing that's a little weird is they give you the cord here is actually 5 foot long. Now, most controllers sold in Japan are only 3 foot long, and North American controllers typically are around 6 feet long. So for them to give you somewhere in between that number and only give you 5 feet instead of 6 feet is a little bit strange, and I don't know why they would have done that. But it is a little bit of an annoyance, since the controllers are slightly less lengthy than what you'd expect. But as long as that's not a big problem, or if you're not gaming from the other side of the room, you can use an extension cord, of course. But as long as you're reasonably close to your system, that's not really going to present a problem. Now, Also, because these things are, made by third-party companies and, reproduced in mass quantities and everything, they don't actually contain the original control chips as was used in these Super Nintendo and Super Famicom controllers. Instead, what you get is just basically a 4021 on a chip that's running on a super tiny board, which makes the entire controller weigh next to nothing compared to an original Super Nintendo or Super Famicom controller. But, you know, that's again not really a problem, because this is actually a really well-designed and well-built controller. This doesn't feel like a piece of junk, even though it's weightless, basically. So all that said, I'm going to show you guys some gameplay. I've got out 2 games, and I'm going to show you some action. So here it is. Pull out the controller here. As you can see, its edge is just like a original Super Nintendo controller. So this came with the RetroDuo Portable, which I'll put the annotation right here if you haven't seen that 4-part video yet. But because it has the original Super Nintendo connection here, it will work with either a Super Famicom or a Super Nintendo. So I've got out my Super Famicom, got that plugged in. I'm going to plug this controller in here with, whoops, like that. Okay, so the games that we got first, R-Type 3, the Third Lightning. I'm going to plug this in, but I'm going to need my Super Nintendo adapter. A link to the video description, or a link to this review is going to be in the annotation right here. And plug that in. This lets me play my Super Nintendo games in my Super Famicom, so I don't have to use this ugly piece of junk. Alright, turn it on, and here we go. Oops, oh, the TV was on. Okay, let's turn it back on again. Alright, here we go. Get the cord out from the system, and now we're going to get out the retro controller here. Oops, I pressed start. Shouldn't have done that. Still going to need a little bit of light here. Ah, damn it, I did it again. Alright. Now we want to go to options. So if I affirm it out loud, then there we go. Alright, so you can see on screen there's button prompts here. When I press the button, it gets lit up in green. Alright, so let's assign the shots to be what I want them to be. Okay, so regular shot, auto shot, force, whoops, force, and like that. Alright, so we're going to play with this controller. Man, I love this game. Go traditional. Alright. Of course, R-Type 3 plays just like classic R-Type, except everything's bigger and better. It's like Super R-Type, but better. And what else can I say? The controls are just perfectly responsive, and this is a really awesome space shooter. Little huge fireballs. Except for this pink one. This one's actually invincible. Invincible until... Whoops. Alright, so now I'm going to show you guys the second game, which will be a mystery until I show it in just a second. This game is, again, one of my favorites. Released in 1993 by Capcom. Of course, this is the greatness that is Mega Man X. Alright, so using this controller to play Mega Man X. Of course, the regular controls here for I just jump and shoot. That's all I have at the moment. But using this controller, it controls great. Or Viva here is invincible, so there's no even point fighting back. Although it doesn't make sense that he's not weak in the head. I'm hitting him and not the suit, so why am I not defeating him? But the original version, you can't defeat him. Scripted event. Zero shows up. It's like, Zero, I'm so much better than you, god damn. Notice X has his eyes open here. And then closes them. That mugshot is the only shot of X having his eyes open in the entire game. It's kind of interesting. All right. So of course, this is the greatness that is Mega Man X, playing with the Super Retro controller from RetroBit. Now these controllers were originally only bundled with the RetroDuo Portable clone, which I've done a review for previously. But now RetroBit is selling them separately, so you can pick them up. So even if you don't have any interest in picking up the RetroDuo Portable clone itself, these controllers are definitely high quality. I'd even go as far to say that they're probably just as good as the OEM controllers. Using the D-pad is so smooth, it just feels great. Yeah, so that'll be it for now. If you want to buy one of these, check eBay, because they're all over the place on eBay. In fact, RetroBit even makes a wireless version that takes 2 AAA batteries. Of course, I don't like anything that uses AAA batteries, so I'd rather use the wired versions that I already have, rather than pick up the wireless versions. But maybe I will, break down and buy the wireless version someday, and then do a Controller Chronicles episode of that. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Fuck you, bats. Now, excuse me while I play some Mega Man X. The capsule. I don't want it. No. I had no choice. Very dirty. That's what she said. Alright, dash boots. Wee. see you guys next time.